Thank you. It's good to be with you this afternoon.
I'd ask you if it's good to be back in Bismarck, but I don't know if anybody's very happy about being back in Bismarck. I guess there is a sense of happiness in finally addressing this issue that's been lingering since you folks went sine die earlier this year.
Yeah, I think you're correct. The big thing is that the legislature finished their business, get it done and done right. And so I guess from that standpoint, I'm glad we're here to get it wrapped up. If things go right, it shouldn't take very long.
This situation was strange. This is the first time that the legislature has invoked this power to call itself back into session since that authority was created. It's not a special session. Basically, I guess it's just a continuation of the regular session that ended, or I guess not ended, but went sine die earlier this year. Now you're coming back to finish the budget. What's been resolved at this point? I mean, for the public that's looking on, what's going to be resolved tomorrow?
Well, the big thing is that we had a meeting last week in which we had bipartisan representation from both the House and the Senate, and we worked out our differences on that particular PERS bill. What it was is we had a budget bill with policy attached to it, and the House wanted the policy, the Senate did not. That was the bottom line. And, of course, if you want to pass the budget, you got to pass the policy because it was attached to it. And so we had a good meeting it would be last Monday when we had it, and we came to a meeting of the minds, and then I think we got a good compromise. I know all of the issues that were really concerned the Senate was that to change the contract that Sanford had signed with the PERS board. People need to understand the legislature isn't getting into a contract with Sanford, but the PERS board is. And so we felt that some of the policy things that the House had put in would affect that contract, and the state of North Dakota would have been liable. And we were able to take care of those issues.
701-293-9000 if you want to join the program. 888-970-9329. The PERS budget's the only thing you're going to be addressing tomorrow?
That's all we're going to be addressing. We're not here for anything else.
I'm not. when you come into session, I mean, are there going to be committee hearings, or is it straight to a floor session, or how is it going to work?
All right. First of all, this particular bill is here. It's had all its hearings. It's been before the House and the Senate. It was in conference committee, so it's locked in a drawer in the Senate chambers. We will come tomorrow morning at 8:00. We will gavel in. Both the House and the Senate will gavel in. Both the House and the Senate will appoint the conferees to go back down and have a legitimate conference committee take care of the differences officially. Now, we've kind of got them recommended, and we've got the changes pretty much agreed to, but we'll go down, and the conference committee will meet and go over the changes, make the appropriate motions, and the bill will then be passed out of the conference committee. Now, it takes a little bit of time because there has to be a report made by the clerk, and the legislative council has to go through the bill again and double-check everything. So we've got about an hour from the time the conference committee is over until we take it up. And it will come to the Senate first because it's a Senate bill. And in between there, I just want you to know that we're making this a very efficient day because the Budget Committee, which is all the House and Senate appropriations people, will meet and take care of their business. They only have an agenda of about an hour and 15 minutes. We'll take care of that, and then we'll come back, and the bill will be ready on the Senate floor, and we should adopt the conference committee report without any problems, pass the bill, it'll go over to the House, and they'll do the same.
And you're certain of that outcome. I mean, it sounds like you're pretty confident of having the votes to pass the bill at this point because there was legislative management appointed a committee to sort of negotiate, I guess, the bill beforehand. You're pretty confident that you have the votes to pass this thing without any further debate, or at least not much debate?
Well, I'm sure there'll be some debate. There'll be debate on why we're having this reconvening session. There'll be some of that'll come up and all that type of thing. On the Senate side, I believe there's not going to be a problem. I don't know about some of the House members. I will tell you one of the things that the Senate agreed to that was in that policy bill. The House wanted to dismiss two of the PERS board members, the health officer and the attorney general or their designees. They wanted them off, and they wanted to replace it with 4 legislators. Of those 4 legislators, 2 were to be appointed by one by the House majority, one by the Senate majority, and then the 2 others would be appointed by the head of legislative management. Now, the head of legislative management this particular biennium is Senator Ray Holmberg. Now, we in the Senate and in the House, we did come to an agreement on that we would go with 2, and they would be appointed by the head of legislative management. And there would be a Democrat and a Republican. And I've heard a little scuttle that some House members weren't, and I'm talking about Republican House members, thought that there shouldn't have been any Democrats on it. Other than that, I really haven't heard a whole lot of talk, anti the amendments or the proposed agreement.
What about, and there was some criticism. First of all, let me ask you this. How much, one thing that I've heard a lot of people concerned about is, what is this costing the taxpayers for the legislature to come back in? And obviously, there's a cost anytime the legislature meets. But you met earlier, now everybody's getting called back again. Do you know how much this is costing the taxpayers?
I sure do. It costs $77,000. I want to repeat that, $77,000 a day during the regular session. Now, when we got to that last day, we would have been around for at least another day, maybe 2. Who knows? Because we were not seeing eye to eye, and nobody was wanting to give an inch. So I think the best thing we did was to go home. What's it going to cost us tomorrow? Well, when it's all said and done, it's going to cost $45,000. Why is it going to cost $45,000 instead of $77,000? A lot less. Number one, reduce staff. We'll have a skeleton staff in both the House and the Senate. Second, we're bringing in at least 70 legislators for other meetings that they'd have been here anyway. For example, the budget section, legislative management, and I believe the Council of State Governments legislative group that's organizing that, it will be tomorrow. So by combining all those, we're going to have some real efficiencies.
Can you hold through the break? I want to ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
That's Senator Rich Wardner from Dickinson. More to come straight ahead. Rob Porter for Jay Thomas. Your call-in number, 701-293-9000, 888-970-9329. We'll be right back. Don't go away. You have dressed. You said it's a skeleton crew down at the legislature. There was a lot of lawmakers that had to come to Bismarck anyway that the state was going to be paying for, and actually this day tomorrow was going to be cheaper than if you'd added another day to the session earlier this year, which all makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of people saying, listen, there's Republicans controlling the Senate, there's Republicans controlling the House, Democrats in particular, I've heard saying, why can't these guys get along? Why couldn't these guys have figured out their differences earlier? Suggesting that there's some poor leadership going on.
Well, all I can say is we're human beings. We disagree. I just want to say this about the Republican Party. The Republican Party do not fall lockstep with one particular group. We have a diverse group. People in the Republican Party are free thinkers. They think for themselves. And so you're going to have disagreements from time to time within the Republican Party. That's what makes it strong. That's what makes the Republican Party what it is because there is debate amongst the members on several issues. And Rob, you know that more than anyone else, that we do have kind of a big tent where there's a lot of discussion going on. This happens to be one of the things that did happen.
Let's switch gears and talk about the oil tax. You had a letter to the editor earlier this year, last week actually, in which you suggested that people who were criticizing the oil tax, and obviously we now know that the quote unquote big trigger that everybody was worried about ended up not hitting at the end of May on June 1st. So we avoided that, and a lot of people sort of coming out and saying, well, it didn't hit, so why did we need to pass it? You suggested that they're not grasping the economics of the situation very well. Explain it to me.
Well, I don't think so. When you take a look at it, if we left those triggers in place, sooner or later they're going to trigger. Those incentives are going to come on, and I'll tell you, we don't know how long they're going to be on, and they do wipe out a lot of they wipe out a huge majority of the revenue that you would have gained if you just left them on, and hopefully they didn't go off. Remember, in 2009, they come within a day of triggering. Now, this time it was a month. It was about a month before they triggered. Those triggers and incentives were put in 1987, when we had a completely different atmosphere in oil drilling. That was back when they were trying to encourage horizontal drilling. We don't need to worry about that now. That's the way they do business. And moving forward, we want to attract the investments of these oil companies. And so I think we do need to make some adjustments in the overall tax rate, and that's what we did. And I think it's a good one. When I think about, I was at the Chamber of Commerce in Dickinson for 7 years. Before the oil, we spent all kinds of time and resources on economic development. We got economic development here. We just need to treat it right, and it will be here for a long, long time. And so if you take a look at this, if you get them to invest here, I'm going to tell you what, you're going to see more revenue in the income tax, and you're going to see more revenue in the sales tax.
I'm glad. I liked the reform. As a matter of fact, if I'd had my druthers, I would have taken the rates down even a little further. But Democrats saying they never had a problem with getting rid of the trigger. I think a lot of people, recognizing the fact that creates a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, both for the state collecting the revenues and for the industry paying the revenues. But they were saying, why did we need to take the rate down? At this point, and I think that was actually a point your counterpart, Senate Minority Leader Mac Schneider, House Minority Leader Kent Onstead, in an op-ed that they wrote, basically saying, the fact that we didn't hit the trigger proves that, we didn't need to move the rates and we didn't need to do this. What's your response to that?
Well, let's take a look at a few things. First of all, the Bakken is right in the middle of the continent. So we've got transportation costs that they don't have down in the Eagle Ford and Texas and the other shale plays down south. And so we've got to compete. The refiners, we have a light oil, and not every refinery takes the light oil. Some of them are made to only deal with heavy crude. So the Texas shale plays have taken over the light crude refineries in the south. We have to ship ours west, which means it is on rail. And so we're discounted. But it's all about competition. We're competing. We are competing for the investment dollar. There is no question about it. And not only are we competing with the shale plays, we are competing with other oil producing countries around the world. And of course, the crown jewel that could happen to the Bakken would be if we open up the trade of American oil with other countries.
Yeah, drop the export ban. When I bring that up, though, when I make that argument on the blog or here on the radio, what a lot of people tell me is, you're full of it, Rob. The oil's here. As long as the oil here, somebody's going to pump it. The idea that we need to lower the tax is ridiculous. I mean, how do you respond to those people?
Well, I respond to that in the fact that, if we just leave things as they are, we want them to come invest with new technology, because keep in mind, we're only getting about 7% at best out of the Bakken shale. And there's new technology out there, new investments to get more. And so I think that we can double that and get maybe 14, 15% of the oil out. And if we don't get them to come here and bring their technology, the oil field will continue to decline. So if we want to keep our production relatively stable, we don't need to get carried away and try to beat everybody in the world, but just keep it steady. We need new technology to come in and keep developing the oil field.
Going back to the session tomorrow again, any chance there's 2 days left out of the 80 days the Constitution allows? Are you going to use both days, or are you going to be able to get it done in one?
We better get it done in one. In fact, my plan is by noon tomorrow we should be out of here, but I'd be very, very upset if it took longer than 1 day.
All right, Senator Wardner, thank you so much for your time.
Yep, thank you, Rob.
Senate Majority Leader Rich Wardner talking about the legislature going back into session tomorrow. I'm Rob Port, sitting in for Jay Thomas. Open phones coming up next, 701-293-9000, 888-970-9329. Don't go away.